Hello and welcome to Las Vegas to the 6th edition of the Infrastructure Summit produced by Structure Research. I'm now joined on the sidelines by David Dorman and Libby Owen, both directors of commercial operations at APR Energy. David, Libby, thank you so much for joining me here. Welcome back to Vegas because I believe this is your second one. How's the conference treating you so far? We're pretty much at the start of it, but how's the conference treating you so far?
It's been excellent. I was able to take part of a panel, very interesting discussions, met a lot of great people, a lot of folks interested for the next one, I guess you would say.
Is this your first one this year or you were here last year?
This is my first infrastructure conference here in Vegas. We were excited to participate with great reviews from last year.
I mean, the turnout has been like crazy because this year they've nearly reached 700 attendees, which is a huge jump. I think it's about 200, 250 more than last year. So the conference is really growing, just like the market. And I think the theme of this year's conference kind of bridges that conversation as well, concurrence. Really grasping everything that's happening in the market. So AI demand, supply chain restrictions, energy, sustainability, all those sort of things. Out of all the trends that are happening in the market right now, what would you say are the ones that are going to drive the growth and development of energy infrastructure, digital infrastructure, data centers? What's your take on the market of everything that's happening in this concurrence? I was going to say bubble is not the right word, but in this concurrence world that we're living in.
I think the one thing that I would start off of is just the supply chain constraints that we're facing. In addition to that, just the labor constraints. When you think about it, a lot of the data center builds right now are lacking on electricians and some of those trades that they need to complete their jobs. On our side, we do, of course, power generation. We have our own technicians and and GT gas turbine technicians, electrical technicians, and if those folks are becoming higher and higher in demand and more difficult to find and secure. So I think labor constraints is something that we're going to have to work on, I would say. Yeah.
I think it's always funny that we live in this AI world now, but it all still comes down to the human building it. Yeah. And Libby, what's your take?
Yeah, so I think supply chain constraints, it's certainly a real concern. These data center, builders, they really just can't keep up with the supply and demand right now. I've been in this industry for my entire career, and I've never in my life seen what's going on today. It's truly unprecedented. So what I see, as we're looking at our target markets and sort of our niche as APR Energy in terms of actually owning the assets, being able to deploy today versus depending upon the OEMs who are pumping out as manufacturing as many units as they possibly can to really keep up with the demand, but the reality is they can't keep up. So then you overlay that with grid constraints and reliance on the utilities, who again just don't have enough capacity to support these gigawatts of power generation that are needed to come online for the data centers. So I see that as a really interesting time, particularly for our organization, and being able to provide equipment really quickly that we control, because we are the owners of an existing fleet of mobile units that we can actually deploy really quickly, and certainly looking to expand and trying to get in line with many others to get into the manufacturing slots so we can expand our fleet.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of keywords there. Keeping up, fast. When you say quickly as well, you mean 1 month to 3 months, which is really fast for the soft deliveries that you do. Mm-hmm. Before we jump into markets and even more into APR, tell us about your mission statement. What were you trying to do for the market? Where does APR come from? What's the history behind it?
The history of APR Energy, we've been around for over 20 years. We actually started back in 2001. We were an Alstom power company, and around 2004 we were founded by John Campion and Lawrence Anderson whenever Alstom Power decided to get rid of a few business divisions. Since then, we've been kind of in the market of, I would say, rapid dispatch, quick power all around the world, mainly I would say bridging solutions, emergency response for many different industries and institutional clients out there.
Okay.
Yeah, and that, just to expand on sort of that experience, and we've done over 5 gigawatts power projects around the globe, over 35 countries, many of which are risky developing countries, sort of filling the emergency gaps.
But you mentioned actually 35 countries. That's a huge operation, even though we're in the US now. Before we come into the US market, since we are now in Vegas for the event, at what point did you kind of shift into data centers? Was there any specific market around the world that was like, you know what, this is an opportunity we're going to explore? What was like the ground zero for the data center development within APR?
Whenever you look at just the demand and where's the demand at the time, we've been seeing since 2024, I think, the need and the gigawatt of demand that's required but not there in the market. So, we decided to take a different approach. We're still there, of course. Our emergency response right now is kind of focused on that data center bridging power solution, a very quick bridging power for a data center to actually have, whatever gap that they may have until they have utility or permanent power. We're able to kind of come in and help them with that, resolve that solution basically. So I feel like really it was the demand that was driving it, just in the U.S. market, and of course other markets, such as oil and gas, because there's a trickle down effect, of course, from the data centers who need gas and other infrastructure. There comes other industries now that need power also to help sustain as well. Yeah, so.
It's not only industries. I mean, just in terms of what was formerly the core business for APR Energy was that emergency fast track disaster response, and so that's still out there, further exacerbated by the fact that there are supply constraint issues. So although our core focus is sort of closer to home, so to speak, in the U.S., there's still a huge need and demand for those more traditional APR sort of projects in years past. So yeah, although our core focus is on the data center market in the U.S., we're still looking at the need globally.
So there's a huge philanthropic side as well to what you do outside of the data center scope.
Absolutely.
Looking into the U.S. market, let's talk about macro trends. So what's happening in the market here? We had Stargate, we had a lot of other projects announced. It's several gigawatts of energy they're going to come online, more than $1 trillion announced in projects this year as well. How is the grid going to cope with that? How is the energy sector in the US going to be able to cope with that? Because at the end of the day, this is an energy business. It's a data center, but it's an energy business. It used to be a real estate, but it's shifted now to an energy business. You don't have the power, you don't build. How is the US going to cope with this?
I would say, the question for me is, we're going to have to really kind of have the data center folks kind of working with the utilities out there in the world. I think there's somewhat of a disconnect. It sounds like, from one of the conferences I was at recently, there was a gentleman from ERCOT there, and it sounds like the ERCOT folks are really starting to kind of work with the suppliers and see what's going on there. But I feel that there really needs to be what's really going to start happening in the industry in order for us to determine how much power is created. Because I think all the customers that we've had, I feel like you start talking to them and they're in the gigawatt range with their need within a period of needs, and is that truly factual, and is that the information that's also being reported back to the utility industry? I feel first and foremost there needs to be a little bit of transparency there, and then from there we could solve the problem. But then you have those supply chain constraints as well.
You just touched on a big topic here as well, because there's a lot of exaggeration with a lot of these headlines, and we come across it every week now. There's some people that announce things that we just know it is not like that. It's not going to happen like that. It's not a gigawatt. It's probably 50 to 100 megawatts, if much. So there's a lot of exaggeration. But maybe, Libby, in terms of geographies, I mean, the US has some of the largest markets in the world, Northern Virginia being the world's house of data centers, the world's HQ for data centers. From a geography perspective across the country, are there any different needs? Are markets popping up more like North Dakota, Texas? What's growing, what's changing in the back of all this demand?
Yeah, so I would say a major driver is where's the gas, and where is it, in terms of pricing. So for these data center projects, I mean, a lot of parts have to come together. I should say stars align, but it's a lot more than just the stars aligning. There's a lot of work that goes into it, but also a lot of players, and that's to me what's really pretty exciting, within this space is, you have, the landowners and land developers, you have the gas suppliers, you have, who has access to the water. I mean, huge constraint right now, and within this specific data center space.
So with these new high density GPU clusters, so these new AI factories, things are changing. The rack densities are increasing by numbers that we've never seen before. Some companies are talking about 2 megawatt racks now, as opposed to just some 20, 50 kilowatts. How does a company like you keep up with this? Like, how does from R&D to delivery, like, how do you keep up with this change? And again, this change is not something that before used to be 5, 10 years. This change is now happening every 6, 12 months. There's something new coming out. How do you keep up as an energy company?
Well, I would start by talking about scalability. So what's and you'll see in terms of the technologies that are really being or have become sort of the anchor to this fast track development and realistic execution timelines is having smaller scale units. There's the smaller sort of reciprocating engines out there. The area that we thrive and has in many different project locations, not only in the data center space, but also just behind the meter utility projects or behind the meter industrial projects, which behind the meter is not a new term.
Yes.
We've been doing behind the meter projects the entire existence of APR Energy. So in terms of scalability and keeping up with the expanded demand within this specific industry. Smaller units being able to scale as the demands grow, as the technologies are evolving, and as the power requirements are increasing, being able to have mobile modular technologies that we can deploy really, really quickly and just ramp up in 25 megawatt blocks to be able to, you're not necessarily having to build a 500 megawatt power plants and wait for all the permitting requirements and financing to come into place. I mean, you can actually deploy and ramp up over time as the needs continue to expand.
Modularity is the keyword.
Yeah, and I was going to say, just like Libby said, scalability is key. When you think about it, let's say we have a 250 megawatt behind the meter solution, and then the customer decides they're going to change out their 1 megawatt rack for a 2 megawatt rack. Well, now we need 500 megawatt. Our equipment, we can scale in and ramp in very quick. To the point where even if that 250 megawatt plant was a permanent plant that we may have built, now we can at least bring in something very quick for a bridging solution to where we can build potentially another 250 megawatt permanent plant. So it just gives us that flexibility to come in and kind of ramp in quick. Scalability is the key.
Yeah. And then when it comes to dealing with clients, so of course one of the holy grails of the data center space is the long term that these contracts last. We're talking about 10, 20, sometimes plus more than 20 years as well. When you go into the negotiating table with a hyperscaler, for example, or in your clouds, and you look at these contracts, what do you have to put in place as a provider? What do you put in place in terms of warranties, SLAs? Like, what does the discussion look like with those guys?
I would say, our traditional business model is not necessarily, being an IPP, right? Providing long-term 20-year PPAs. Our niche is really in this, bridging power, where we're filling that gap. But what's so important to be able to, help to move to the permanent solution, which we can also provide as well, is really working with partners, understanding our clients' needs, understanding what's important to them, and of course in the data center space, reliability and availability and no downtime is the most important, almost the most important factor, oftentimes the most important factor. So being able to bring a solution that kind of bridges that gap, but then also being able to and flexible and open to working with partners to get to the long-term solution, or being able to work with our partners in developing or co-developing those solutions for the long term.
On the downtime side, the 5 nines used to be the big goal. So we get 5 nines of uptime. Has it changed? Is it more than 5 nines now? How do you view, like when you talk to them, what do they want now? Because I assume that 100% is not guaranteed. You can't guarantee 100% it's going to be there. But is it like 10 nines now? Like how have things changed? The expectations changed?
I've actually seen it the other way around. I've seen the availability requirement kind of fall off to fall off somewhat. There's still somewhat of an availability requirement, but due to the fact that there is the supply chain constraints, a lot of the end users aren't able to get their backup power, their backup diesel generators or whatever infrastructure they were looking at for backup, and just a true behind the meter solution. It's very difficult to achieve. That let's call it 10 nines. We could potentially get there, but it just means more equipment. So I've actually seen, like I've said, I've seen it the other way around to where it's more of a speed to market requirement than an availability requirement.
Okay. And then when we look into the availability, so you already mentioned the fast to market as well. You deliver solutions between 30 to 90 days, which is fairly fast, I would say. What goes into delivering things so fast? Like, what's the process from the point that I sign the contract with you until I have the power on? So what's the process within those 30 to 90 days, or what happens?
So I would say go back from that contract signed, and what's critical today because of the equipment constraints is signing up for reservation of that equipment, and with the OEMs, that's putting down payments in place so that you're reserving a space in line in the manufacturing timeline. With us, we have just like many of my colleagues in this space. I mean, we have an unprecedented volume of inquiries and requests, and being able to what's real, what's not, and then once you get to that point, making sure that you have a way to reserve that equipment, so that when all your regulatory and permitting and all those other requirements are fulfilled, that we can move very, very quickly, and we help our clients to support that process. And certainly in some markets are more data center friendly than others, and those certainly kind of are a higher priority for our team as we're looking at what locations, what geographies we really want to focus our efforts. And then once the contract's signed and we say go, that 30, 60, 90 day timeline, we have everything really in-house. We have a fantastic transportation logistics group. They've moved these units all around the globe. The mobility and modularity is probably the single biggest area that, you're not having to pour concrete pads necessarily for these bridging solutions, where we can deploy our units. They're roadworthy. We can transport them very quickly. We have a strategic hub in Texas near Houston, where we deploy our equipment, and then having the in-house expertise, as David mentioned earlier, where we have our own engineering design teams. We have the GT technicians, the project management fields. Really, we bring a full turnkey service. So from logistics to the mobilization, to the transportation, to the installation, commissioning, and throughout the life of the contract, the overall operation and maintenance of the project. To have those capabilities and core competencies in-house allows us to not only transact quickly, but also to execute very quickly with very qualified, experienced personnel.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, so when it does come to the equipment, one thing to note, of course, we own the equipment, so we, whenever the equipment is off contract, it goes to our hub, and from there, we do our servicing, inspections, and everything that's required to have the unit ready for the next job. Of course, we do the operations and maintenance whenever it's at the job, but we keep our gear ready and available to go the minute that a contract is ready to execute. So the other thing to note is we just don't provide gas turbines. We actually provide the full power facilities, all the auxiliary equipment. So we have transformation. We're able to step up from 13.8 all the way to from 34.5 all the way to 230 kV. We keep that transformation, switchgear, switchyard equipment, and switching equipment in stock. We also keep gas regulation pressure, gas pressure regulation, metering skids, and other liquid fuel forwarding skids and everything in stock. So we keep all of the equipment that's required for the plant to actually run. We keep that in stock. And given the fact that it's modular, it's easy to install, and it's easy to kind of connect everything together and just push the start button and let it run. So we're able to, we've had years and years of experience of designing and implementing these projects. I think Libby noted over 85 projects. So we have the experience doing it. The muscle memory's there still.
Crystal balling time. So if you look into the next 5-10 years time, how do you see, or what shifts do you see influencing how energy power is procured, delivered? How do you monetize these heavy loads? Give us your take on the next 5 to 10 years. What's going to really change in the energy space?
I feel ultimately, you are going to start seeing within 5 years the utilities are going to start getting involved. However, I feel that the standard consumer, your household consumer, they're going to gripe because prices are going to rise. So I feel that you're probably going to get to the point where there may be a specific fee that may be tallied on to a data center. They're not going to be able to get kind of those cheaper, industrial type rates that they've been able to get in the past. That's just kind of my crystal ball on it. I think what you'll potentially see is maybe more behind the meter solutions, just because of that. Because I think at that time a solution or a permanent solution, a bridging solution that's behind the meter into a permanent solution may be able to compete against a utility rate that's got a fee onto the data center. So I crystal ball in here, but I foresee that you'll probably see more behind the meter solutions is what I believe.
Yeah, and I have seen just in these past 6 months, a lot of new companies pop up. A lot of people starting their own, leaving their careers and starting their own companies. And I have this plot of land, and I'm going to develop it, and hopefully it's successful. But I'm seeing there's a huge amount of opportunity right there. But to your point earlier, what's actually happening versus what's being talked about as a potential. So I think that we'll start to see more and more standardization, more streamlining of processes, procedures, expectations, sort of technologies.
And that's probably one of the most important things to talk right now as we are talking about how to build these new AI factories, because it's the start. You have to build it from ground up. You can't build the building and then let's think about sustainability. It has to be built now. But look, guys, I'm going to let you go. So David Dorman, Libby, Owen, both directors of commercial business at APR Energy. Thank you so much for talking to me. As for your home, thank you for watching, and do check our website and social media for the latest digital infrastructure news from across the globe. At the Tech Capital you lead, we report. Bye for now.